All right, today we're putting on our detective hats. We're about to dive deep into a piece of ancient Talmudic text to solve a really fascinating logical puzzle. And what's wild is, it all centers on a ritual that hasn't actually been performed for almost 2,000 years.
So here's how we're going to crack this case. First, we'll set the scene and talk about what makes a perfect offering. Then, we'll look at all the ways it can go wrong. That's going to lead us right to the heart of the mystery, the Talmud's big question. After that, we'll look at a possible theory, see how it holds up when a contradiction appears, and finally, we'll solve the whole textual puzzle.
Okay, first things first. I want you to imagine the ancient temple in Jerusalem. This was a place where everything, and I mean everything, was about precision, intention, and ritual purity. Every single action was loaded with meaning, and it had to be done perfectly.
We're going to zoom in on one specific ritual, the meal offering, or Mishna. This wasn't an animal sacrifice, it was an offering made from fine flour. And the absolute key moment, the central act, was when a priest would scoop out a symbolic handful called the kometz to be burned on the altar. That one single action is what our entire detective story pivots on.
And you gotta understand the mindset here. For any of these rituals to actually count, to be valid, they had to follow the rulebook to the absolute letter. This wasn't a close enough is good enough kind of situation. It was all about perfection. And that's exactly why the whole idea of what could disqualify an offering is so incredibly important.
So now let's turn to our main piece of evidence, our source text, the Mishna. It gives us a very specific list of all the things that could go wrong and basically invalidate the entire offering.
First up, there are rules all about the person doing the ritual. The offering is totally invalid if the priest fails on any number of personal fronts. I mean, from being in a state of mourning, to not wearing the right vestments, or being ritually impure. It's basically a whole checklist of personal readiness. And then you've got the rules about the physical action itself. The priest's posture, which hand he used, and especially the amount of flour he scooped. It all had to be exact. Picking up even a single tiny grain of salt by mistake with the flour could invalidate the whole shebang. The technique had to be absolutely flawless.
Okay, so we have the rules, seems straightforward enough, but the Talmud is way more than just a rule book. It's this incredible record of intense analysis. And the sages, they notice something kind of weird about how these rules are written. And this is where our detective work really kicks into high gear.
So here it is. This is the mystery. The text kicks off by saying the rules apply to both the meal offering of a sinner and all other meal offerings. But wait a second. If the rule applies to all offerings, doesn't that already include the sinner's offering? Why bother mentioning it separately? It seems totally redundant, and in the world of Talmudic analysis, there's no such thing as a wasted word. Every single phrase is a clue.
So the Talmud's first crack at solving this puzzle brings in the opinion of a really famous sage, Rabbi Shimon, and he offers up a principle that seems like it might just explain everything.
Rabbi Shimon's core idea is pretty simple. A meal offering brought by a sinner is deliberately made less fancy. It doesn't have the luxury ingredients like oil and frankincense. And the reasoning is, a person shouldn't get to bring this prestigious, high-quality offering as an atonement for a sin. It's supposed to be a more humble kind of thing.
Okay, so here's theory number one. Since the sinner's offering is intentionally a lesser quality offering, you might logically think, hey, maybe the rules for actually performing the ritual are a bit more lenient too. So the Talmud suggests maybe the Mishna singles out the sinner's offering just to teach us, nope, even for this more humble offering, every single one of those strict rules we just went over still applies. It's a pretty smart, elegant solution.
That seems to wrap it all up in a neat little bow, right? The extra words have a clear purpose, but, in the Talmud, you always have to test your theories. Is our case really closed? Well, not quite.
And this is where it gets really good. The Talmud now does what any good detective would. It stress tests this idea by comparing it to another very similar case. And almost immediately, a huge problem pops up. Okay, so check out this comparison. A sinner's animal offering is also considered a lesser offering because it doesn't get the usual wine libations. The logic is identical. But, and this is a huge but, when the Mishna talks about disqualifications for animal offerings, it just says all slaughtered offerings. It doesn't single out the sinner's offering. The phrasing is completely inconsistent.
And that, right there, is the fatal flaw. If the reason for the special wording was to teach us that the strict rules apply even to lesser offerings, then that same wording should have been used for the animal offering too. But it wasn't. which means our first theory, as neat as it was, has a massive hole in it. There has to be something deeper going on here.
And now it's time for the final act, the brilliant conclusion. The real answer, it turns out, has less to do with the quality of the offering itself and way more to do with the actual structure of the Talmudic text.
Okay, hang with me. Here's how this puzzle actually gets solved. First, you have to know that an earlier Mishnah on a totally different topic was already established as not following Rabbi Shimon's opinion. So a reader studying the text in order would naturally assume that this next Mishnah, our Mishnah, also disagrees with him. By explicitly mentioning the sinner's offering, the very case Rabbi Shimon is famous for, the text is sending a signal. It's a clarification, basically telling the reader, hey, hold on. For this specific law, we're switching gears. We are following Rabbi Shimon's view here.
So get this. The crucial point is that the seemingly redundant phrase isn't about the ritual at all. It's a piece of meta-commentary. It's a signpost for the reader who is trying to navigate this incredibly complex legal debate. It's there just to clarify whose legal opinion is being used at that specific moment. It just goes to show you, in the Talmud, context isn't just important, it's literally everything.
And this leaves us with a really powerful final thought. We just saw how what looks like a simple rule about flower offerings actually contains all these hidden layers of debate, assumptions, and textual cross-references. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? How might this whole idea of looking for hidden context and structural clues change the way we read any foundational text, whether it's legal or philosophical or even scientific? What other puzzles are just waiting to be solved, hidden right there in the phrasing?